Welcome everybody to the Standing Committee on Access to Information, Privacy and Ethics, meeting 122. Pursuant to Standing Order 108-3H7, study of breach of personal information involving Cambridge Analytica and Facebook. And today we have again from Google Canada, Colin McKay. Go ahead for 10 minutes.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Thank you for the invitation to appear today to speak again about these important topics. At Google, we believe in ensuring our users have choice, transparency, and control. These values are built into every product we make. We build products for everyone and make most of them free. Privacy is also for everyone and should be simple to understand and control. At Google, we combine cutting-edge technology with data to build products and services that improve people's lives, help grow the economy, and make the web safer. With partners, we are working to tackle big challenges and enable scientific breakthroughs. We understand that our users trust us to share information about them so that we can build better products and serve and improve their lives. But we also know that with that comes great responsibility. That's why we do so with strong privacy and security practices. Before I provide an update on important work that's happened on our end since I appeared before this committee in May, I want to briefly outline the 4 key pillars that underpin how Google thinks about protecting user data: transparency, control, data portability, and security. First, transparency. Our approach to privacy stems directly from our founding mission: to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. That's why we build for everyone. Providing most of our products for free is a key part of meeting that mission, and ads help us make that happen. With advertising, as with all our products, users expect us to keep their personal information confidential and under their control. We do not sell personal information. This is really important. I want to repeat that point. We do not sell personal information. We strive to be upfront about the data we collect, why we collect it, and how we use it. This starts with intuitive product design, ensuring that our privacy policy is clear and concise, and making privacy controls immediately accessible from the privacy policy. We also look for ways to add transparency into our products directly so that users can understand the privacy implications of their choices in context, from how you share documents in Google Drive to understanding why you're seeing certain ads. Second, with regard to user control, our privacy tools are built for everyone. Different people have different ideas about privacy, so we must build with that in mind. Our My Account Center puts these privacy and security settings in a single place, making it easy to find and set preferences. I want to call attention to our security checkup and privacy checkup tools, which we regularly promote to users. These tools help users identify and control the apps that have access to their Google account data and guide users to review and change their security and privacy settings, like deleting their Google activity, disabling personalized ads, or downloading a copy of their information. Third, we believe portability is a key way to drive innovation, facilitate competition, and best serve our users. That's why we've been working on it for over a decade. If a user wants to try out or even switch to another product or service, they should be able to do it so as easily as possible, not be locked into a service. In 2011, we launched Google Takeout, allowing users to download their data from Google and use it with a different service. And we announced an important update to that service this year, the Data Transfer Project, which we developed and now are working on with leading partners in the industry to facilitate that transfer between services. Fourth, security considerations are paramount in all of these efforts. Securing the infrastructure that provides Google services is critical in light of the growing and sophisticated nature of many threats directed at our services and users. Google products are built at their core with strong security protections, including continuous efforts to block a range of security threats. We make technology like safe browsing available for free to other technology providers. This helps to protect internet users on and off of Google services. With that in mind, our privacy work is never finished. We try to learn from our mistakes and don't take our success for granted. Our goal is to be the best in class and continually raise the bar for ourselves and industry. This committee's current inquiry stems from a breach of personal information associated with Cambridge Analytica and Facebook, first reported earlier this year. When this news broke, Google proactively embarked on an analysis of our products and services to further improve the privacy of our products, particularly in relation to developer access to our data. This effort, called Project Strobe, as it was known internally at Google, has so far resulted in several important insights and actions about our platforms. More will be coming. We announced some earlier this month, but in the interest of updating this committee on what's happened since we last spoke, let me offer a quick overview of actions we've recently taken. The first update is with regards to app permissions. We announced an update earlier this month outlining how consumers will now get more fine-grained control over what account data they choose to share with each app. We launched more granular Google account permissions that will show in individual dialog boxes when you download an app and when that app is updated. People want fine-grained control over the data they share with apps, so instead of seeing all requested permissions in a single screen, these apps will have to show you each requested permission, one at a time, within its own dialog box. For example, if a developer requests access to both calendar entries and Drive documents, you'll be able to choose to share one, but not the other. The second update concerns Gmail. We understand that when users grant apps access to their Gmail, they do so with certain use cases in mind. So we're limiting the types of apps that can request access to Gmail to those that directly enhance email functionality, such as mail merge services or send delay products. Moreover, these apps will need to agree to new rules on handling Gmail data and will be subject to security assessments. And people can always review and control which apps have access to their Google account data, including Gmail, within our security checkup tool. The third update concerns restricting apps that can request call log and SMS permissions on Android devices. When users grant SMS, contact, and phones permissions to Android apps, they do so with certain use cases in mind. We now limit apps' ability to receive call log and SMS permissions on Android devices and are no longer making contact interaction data available via the Android Contacts API. Many third-party apps, services, and websites build on top of our various services to improve everyone's phones, working life, and online experience. We strongly support this active ecosystem, but we understand its success depends on users knowing that their data is secure and on providing clear tools and guidelines for developers. From the unbundling of permissions that are shown to users when deciding to give access to their sensitive data, to limiting developer access to Gmail, to requiring developers to undertake security enhancements, we continue to make the securing of data a top priority while supporting a wide range of useful apps. When it comes to protecting their data and giving them more control over their data, Canadian consumers are counting on us, and Canadian businesses are counting on us. Google search tools help Canadians find information, answers, and even jobs. And our advertising products help Canadian businesses connect with consumers and customers around the globe. Which brings me to one more update since I last appeared before this committee. In September, Deloitte released a report looking at the economic impact of Google Search and Google Ads on Canadian businesses. Deloitte estimates that our ad services supported between $10.4 and $18.5 billion in economic activity by those businesses and partners, which translates to the equivalent of 112 to 200,000 full-time jobs. The Android ecosystem in Canada helped generate $1.5 billion in revenue within Canada's app economy, supporting 69,000 jobs. The web is at the heart of economic growth, both here in Canada and globally. That's why Google invests in building products and services that help businesses, entrepreneurs, nonprofits, developers, creators, and students succeed online. Hundreds of thousands of Canadians are using Google's tools to grow global audiences and enterprises, and we're proud to support Canadian businesses in making most of the web. We at Google remain committed to continuing to develop products and programs to bring this opportunity to everyone. And our privacy and security work is never finished. We will continue to do this, and we stand ready to do our part and to help build a better ecosystem for Canadians and Canadian businesses. Thank you again for the opportunity to be here today, and I look forward to continuing to work with you on these important issues and welcome any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. McKay. We'll start off, first of all, with Mr. Bayless. 7 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. McKay, for being with us again. Much appreciated. Simple question. On average, how many data points do you collect per user? Like the average user, how many data points would Google have on that person?
I can't give you an exact number to that. There's transparency around the data that's associated with you individually in your My Account, the specific data that most Canadians are interested in and concerned about.
Google collects data on, say, Frank Bayless.
Yeah.
And you have how many points on average, if I was the average user?
I don't have an exact number for you.
Could you get us that number?
Yeah, I can get you that number.
So essentially, if you could tell me how many users there are, and then you just how many data points, and you divide it out, a very simple number.
Yep.
I'd also like to know, since Google Home has come in, how much more data is being pulled in on data points per user through Google Home. If you could also provide that.
Well, Google Home is an extension of the services you already use.
Yeah.
So many of your interactions with Google Home are similar to what you've already been doing on your desktop,
Do you
your
track?
laptop,
Do
or
you
your
track
phone.
how the data points come in? If it comes in through a phone, through Google Home, or through the search engine, do you track when you have these data points how Google gets them?
Not specifically. If you do a search for music, that comes under whether you have a Google Play subscription.
No,
or
I meant
using YouTube.
in Google's back offices where you have all these data on all of us. Do you know where those points come from, or you just collect the data as is?
I'm afraid I don't know the answer for you. I know there's a specific, if you're doing a voice search in your My Account, it will now tell you what that voice search was and give you a
Yeah.
recording of it. But
If you could
Yeah.
let me know that, then. So I'd like to know specifically how many data points on average do you have per person and that. Now, you're about control and transparency. If I said I want you to give up that data, is there any way I could ask you to not track me and to give and to erase, not for me to see, I know I can erase what I see, but what Google has on me? Is there any way I have of saying, stop following me?
yeah, in your My Account, you can select by type of information or by service that you want that to stop be collected, and you want that record to
What
be
you've
erased.
collected, can I ask you to delete what you've collected?
Yes.
Not what you've collected that I can see what you've collected. I'm talking about, and I'll be clear on this question here. In your servers, in your back offices, you have data on Frank Bayless.
Yeah.
That data, I know that you can say when you collect data here, but I'm talking about that data that you keep, that you don't delete when I say don't follow me, that you do keep anyways. That data that I want removed, can I get that done?
If you tell us you want us to delete your account and delete data associated with it, we do.
Not my account either. I want to be very specific here. You have data points on Frank Bayless, and I don't want you to track me at all. Not going forward, but backwards, sideways. If the data that you've kept on me, is there any way I could ask, and maybe you don't have the answer now, but if you could go and talk to your technical people and say, how can I, through a choice, get rid of that?
Well, the reason I'm being specific about your account is because that's how we know that it's associated with an individual, however they've called themselves.
I know what my account is, and I know
Yeah.
how I interact with my account for what I
Yeah.
see about what you track on me, but it doesn't. There's a difference between what I see, what you track on me, and what you nonetheless continue to track. And I'm more concerned about what you continue to track, irregardless of what I say in my account. That's what I'm asking about.
And I'm trying to be responsive. The data that we have that we associate with you as an individual is represented in My Account. And your decision to say, stop tracking me and delete this information is exercised through My Account.
I know that. That allows me to know that you've deleted what I see that you've tracked on me. It does not, and you'll correct me if I'm wrong, you don't need to answer now. It does not
Yep.
force you to delete what you have and continue to collect elsewhere on me in your own servers. And specifically, this will lead to my next question that you
Yeah.
could look into too. Over the years, your terms of use have changed.
Yeah.
And they've done so, in my estimation, to allow you to collect more and more data, and the manner in which you do and don't collect data, and what you do and don't have to delete when you so choose to. So could you give us, and I don't expect you, could you give us a listing of all the times that the terms of use have changed, and how that has specifically enhanced your ability to capture data and can keep it?
Well, I can't give you an exact listing today, but my response to your question is that the changes in the terms of service and the privacy policy have been a reflection that our users have asked for more detail in how we collect data and have asked more detail in how they can access information about that data and how it's used. So the intent is clarity and transparency.
You've never changed them that have allowed you more leeway. Then none of the changes that have taken place have given Google more leeway to collect and maintain data?
There have been changes that have been put in place so that information can be shared across Google services so that we can provide better services to you. But that's been transparently communicated as well. So it's never a question of being duplicitous or trying to conceal the use of data. In fact, the changes have always erred towards being over-descriptive.
If you could be specific on the changes that have given you more leeway. So what my line of questioning is all to do with how much data you're collecting, when you actually have to delete it, not simply from my account, but from your own servers, and how your terms of use have evolved to allow you to collect and maintain more data, irrespective if I ask that my account deleted or not. A last question I have then at this round is to do with boomerang routes. Are you familiar with that?
I'm not familiar with the term, no.
It's like, say I'm in Toronto and I want to send another email or something to Toronto, where instead of going through the network in Toronto, it'll be routed through the States.
Yep.
You're familiar with that issue then?
Yep.
Has Google ever enforced or put in any contract with any company that they must follow Google's routing? Because essentially, when my data goes in the United States, all my data can be taken. I have no rights because I'm not an American citizen. And I have strong concerns that our data is being taken that way. And what I've been reading, and that you can correct me if I'm wrong, is that sometimes Google contractually obligates people to route things through the States, ergo, so that they can collect data.
I can't speak to specific contracts that have that obligation. I know that there are contracts with our enterprise and commercial users that try to stipulate that behavior with their own data, and that's a contract between entities. But the underlying principle in that routing is based around the efficiency of the network and the reliability of the network. So
My
that it
concern
does
is about
boomerang so
data.
that it's in multiple routes.
My concern is about data protection, and I'm asking a very specific question. You don't have to give the answer yet either. Has Google imposed routing regulations where, for example, it would not necessarily need to go through the States? So if I send an email within Toronto to Toronto, I don't need it to go through Chicago and bounce to Detroit and come back up. I just need it to go that way. And it's not efficient, but it's efficient if you want to collect data, because it gets my data in an area where I have no control over it. I'm asking specifically, has Google put in place contracts which force such routing, which dictate the type of routing?
Thank you, Mr. Bayless. Next up for 7 minutes, Mr. Kent.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mr. McKay, for joining us again. And let me say at the beginning, I consider the Google search engine to be the preeminent search engine in the world. I used it in my previous life as a journalist from the mid-1990s. I use it every day, dozens of times, and I think the benefits of that Google search engine are in many ways invaluable. But in recent days, we have learned there is a dark side to Google's commitments and policy positions, even in terms of a contradiction between your last appearance here and your appearance today. On May the 10th, you were asked, has there actually been any data breaches from Google's databases compared to what's happened with Facebook? And you replied, not that we're aware of. Would you like to correct that now? And were you aware of it at the time? We understand that Google sat for 3 years with the knowledge that there had been a serious breach of Google's data, and that this revelation earlier this year in March, or the actions taken earlier in March, were simply to close down for fear of comparison with the Facebook breach.
So I think you're talking about the announcement around Google Plus.
Well, yeah, yes, Google Plus, yes.
Okay. So earlier this year, at the same time that that Facebook and Cambridge Analytica story came out, we launched an internal process to verify that our APIs and internal data protection processes weren't allowing similar lapses in information sharing. And through that process, what we discovered is that in Google Plus, there was a bug, not a breach. And the bug allowed apps that had access to a user's public data, so data they had chosen to share on their profile, to access elements of that data that the user hadn't necessarily granted permission to. And it also allowed the app to access information that user had shared with a friend in that same subset of data. Because Google Plus was designed as a privacy protective tool, we have very limited logs about what is available in terms of behavior on Google Plus, because we don't keep a record of what our users do on Google Plus. So we had a 2-week window to evaluate whether or not developers were aware of that bug within the API and the fact that they could access this additional information, whether they had acted on it, and whether any information had been collected. And our internal data protection office reviewed that, and they could find no evidence that there was an awareness that that bug existed, that that data had been accessed, or that it had been misused. And so once that had been identified, they then went through the evaluation of harm and whether or not they should notify users that this bug existed and the potential had existed for this to happen. And what they determined was there was no sign that the information, that bug had been accessed by developers. There was no sign that information had been shared in a manner they did not expect. And there was really no way to notify developers of how to change their access to the data, because as soon as we noticed the bug, we closed it. And then also, in notifying users, we could neither identify a set of users that had been affected by the bug, because there was none in the data available to us, and therefore we couldn't notify them on any behavior that would change any possible harm from that bug. So that was the rationale behind the decision.
Okay, well, if we could look now at another member of the Google family, the controversial Sidewalk Labs project with Waterfront Toronto. And just a few days ago, less than a week ago, Anne Cavoukian, who I think is recognized as a world-leading authority on privacy and threats to privacy, vulnerabilities to privacy, resigned as an advisor because she said that the commitment from Sidewalk Labs that personal data would be de-identified in its various projects, and we still don't know much about what those projects may or may not be, that she didn't believe that it would in fact be de-identified and that personal data would not be protected. Can you speak to that?
Unfortunately, I'm here on behalf of Google Canada, and Sidewalk is an independent company under Alphabet, so I can't speak to their plans or their announcements.
But certainly within the same Alphabet larger company, the ownership of that company, you would speak to, I mean, obviously there must be similar data protection commitments. Those commitments have been made in Sidewalk Labs, as you've made with us here again today.
I can't speak to their thought process on how they're identifying data protection in the project they're developing, because while we have similar ownership, they are independent and they're tackling a very different project to that Google undertakes.
But you understand the concern that has been raised at this committee meeting since the Cambridge Analytica, Facebook, Aggregate IQ scandal first broke, that there's a great deal of discussion about the fact that the so-called dataopolies, the massive tech companies, are mostly American, and that their subsidiaries around the world are very often subject to the operating policies of these companies. And I'd come back again to your sister company, Sidewalk Labs, and Jim Balsillie, who is no minor player in terms of the rapidly evolving digital world, has called Sidewalk Labs as Sidewalk Toronto is not a smart city. He says it is a colonizing experiment in surveillance capitalism, attempting to bulldoze important urban, civic, and political issues. And Mr. Balsillie concluded this article that I'm sure you've read. Of all the misguided innovation strategies Canada has launched over the past 3 decades, this purported smart city is not only the dumbest, but also the most dangerous. Surely you must have some corporate comments to a statement like that.
There's a specific reason why Sidewalk is an independent company with a very different mandate and behaves in a very different way, and that's because it operates independently from Google, both on data protection as well as the way it's working through the product development in Toronto. So I don't have an opinion on how Sidewalk is conducting their business, and the parallels that exist because there's a broader global conversation around data protection and privacy, as well as the development of both urban and rural areas.
How would Google Canada feel about the creation of legislation to embrace some of the elements of the European Union's general data protection regulations?
This is something that we covered in my earlier meeting. From Google's point of view, we've already implemented the steps necessary to be compliant with general data protection regulations. So we have internally gone through the hundreds of years of engineers' time to make that transition. So if you were to make those proposals in legislation, we would participate in that legislative process and we'd provide our comments. But in the end, we would be looking at a landscape that we are already familiar with and that we already comply with in Europe. The challenge that is presented in Canada is the extension of GDPR to a broad extent would create greater compliance obligations on smaller and medium-sized businesses. And they're already feeling that stress, not just here in Canada, in the United States and Asia, but in Europe, in terms of understanding their obligations under the GDPR. So that's something to keep in mind. From our point of view, as I said, it's a broader data protection conversation.
A year ago, a Facebook executive told this committee that regulation, in fact, would discourage further investment by Facebook in Canada. What would that be a similar case with Google?
For us, we're extremely happy with the opportunities that are available in Canada, not just in terms of the business, but in terms of growing the engineering teams and making an investment in Canada's innovation ecosystem. So regulatory conversations are nuanced, but we wouldn't make a blanket statement like that.
Thank you, Mr. Kent. Next up for 7 minutes, Mr. Angus.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Mr. McKay, for coming back. The Prime Minister, when Sidewalk Labs was announced, he did say that he had been discussing this idea of a smart city with Google for a number of years. How did the conversations begin with the Prime Minister's office and Google about moving forward on a smart cities initiative?
I'm not sure. I think those conversations, he must have been referring to the leadership of Alphabet when he referred to Google and Alphabet itself. Sidewalk was explicitly built to pursue projects like this.
Okay.
So
Eric Schmidt, he had said that Google had been looking for someone to give us a city for some time and to put us in charge. So would the Sidewalks Lab fit that model of a city that Google could be in charge of?
I heard those comments from Eric Schmidt as well, and I think he was generalizing a broader intent to see how technology could be used to improve and develop an urban area in integrating technology.
Okay. He also said that for this project to succeed, they would need, quote, substantial forbearances from existing laws and regulations. I've never seen a real estate development plan on a waterfront where the developers came in and said they wanted to be exempt from Canadian law. So with Eric Schmidt's comments, could you tell us what Google would think would be important to exempt them from law in order to make a smart cities project go through?
I can't speak to the details of what Sidewalk is intending. I can make observations around the development of telecommunications in Canada and railway and internet access, where
We're talking about Eric Schmidt, founder of Google, who said for this project to succeed, they expect that this government will exempt them from existing laws and regulations. What would those laws and regulations be? I mean, everyone else has to follow the laws. Why not Google?
I'm not privy to Sidewalk's plans or conversations, so I can't speak to that.
Okay. Yeah, but this is Eric Schmidt, right? Saying this?
I think I've read the same newspaper
Okay,
article
so-
you have.
Okay.
So. CEO, not the founder.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I'm never good with my corporate structure.
Yeah.
So, but I want to just ask more about this idea, because you talk about transparency, but if the Prime Minister had been speaking with Google for a number of years on this plan, was the idea that this would ever be put up to competitive bidding, or was this going to be a project for Google and an experiment for Google in the Toronto waterfront?
Once again, I can't talk to the Prime Minister's process, but I thought that Waterfront Toronto actually had a request for information that was a competitive process.
Yeah, I mean, right now, Toronto real estate's more expensive than Brooklyn. So Sidewalk Labs gets 12 acres of some of the most prime real estate in North America. I mean, people would be chomping at the bit for this. And yet the request for directions for this project was 40 days. Nobody could compete in a 40-day turnaround to get this. But if Google had had long prior conversations, it would suggest that the fix was in. So it would be in Google's corporate interest, certainly, to get this access to this major real estate development, would it not?
You'd have to speak to Waterfront Toronto about how many expressions of interest they had for the RFI.
Right, but 40 days, don't you think that would be, I mean, if you were going to build a smart city, you were going to do high-tech, this was going to be something Dan Doctorow says is going to take 15 or 20 years, and you'd think that anybody put that out for 40 days? That would be kind of ridiculous to think that anybody else other than Google would be able to compete, right? I'm just trying to get a sense of how these big mega projects are done.
Unfortunately, I can't speak to what Waterfront Toronto knew or didn't know and what fed into their decision-making process.
Okay. You know, we certainly had the resignation of Ann Kavukian, who I think carries a lot of respect. Sadia Muzaffar, who resigned, said that this project shows a, quote, blatant disregard for residents' concerns about data and digital infrastructure. There's nothing innovative about city building that disenfranchises its residents in insidious ways and robs valuable earnings out of public budgets. This does reflect on Google. Do you think that there may be a better way of engaging with the public on a project that is this incredibly valuable in terms of real estate, but also sending a symbol of what Google plans?
The fact that we're having a conversation today means that it does reflect on Alphabet and the sister companies, including Google. However, from what I've seen as a bystander, Waterfront Toronto and Sidewalk Toronto are engaging publicly on these issues, and this is part of that dialogue.
Yeah, it was interesting because when the plan was put forward, and so we're talking real estate governance. I know that's not your area of expertise, but I mean, 12 acres. When it was brought to the Waterfront Real Estate Committee, they were made aware that this is not just 12 acres. This is potentially the whole Portland. So this is an extremely valuable chunk of real estate to turn over. They were given 3 days to look at this, but when it actually got to the vote, it was presented as a fait accompli. I mean, how do we reassure the public that we're doing world-class infrastructure if you're turning over massive amounts of extremely valuable real estate with such little oversight, and Google thanks the Prime Minister saying they've been looking for someone to give them a city to be in charge of? Don't you think Google could have done a better job of talking with Sidewalk Labs to reassure that this is being vetted in a proper manner?
I'm sorry to be repetitive, but this was a decision-making process by Waterfront Toronto, and the process that they followed was under their own control. So.
Yeah, apparently they've moved a whole new committee to handle the real estate deals outside of the committee that was raising the flags. But I'm going to finally ask on IP because it says that the contracts for Sidewalk are being structured with consultants and vendors so that Sidewalk, Alphabet, Google will own or have worldwide royalty-free license to any IP that's being developed out of this project. Is that in the public interest, or is that going to be in the interest of Eric Schmidt, Google, Alphabet, to have that kind of IP control over anything that's developed out of what is a public project?
I'm afraid I saw the same report you did, but I wasn't involved in the process and I haven't seen the documents.
I mean, you are their Google spokesman. Do you get briefed on this stuff?
As I said, Sidewalk Toronto is an independent company that's pursuing its own business and working with the government independently.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Angus. Next up for 7 minutes, Mr. Erskine-Smith.
Thanks very much. So, you worked for the Privacy Commissioner previously, yeah? What year did you work for the Privacy Commissioner?
From 2007 to 2010.
Okay. So maybe a bit before where I was going, because in 2013, I want to get to some other questions, but first, this was bugging me, and I didn't ask it when you were here last time. Jennifer Stoddart, when she was Privacy Commissioner, recommended, she made a few key recommendations for reforming PIPEDA, and one was requiring that organizations publicly disclose the cooperation with sharing information with governments. And so I wonder, you're not going to have this information today, but paragraph 7, sub 3, C.1 of PIPEDA states that an organization may disclose to government without knowledge and consent of an individual where information has been disclosed. Could you provide to this committee the number of times that Google has shared information to the Canadian government without individuals' knowledge and consent pursuant to this section?
Now, I can't give you the specific information, if you can give me that subsection specifically, I'll reply in detail. But what I can say is that we've had a transparency report since well before 2013, and certainly during my time at the Privacy Commissioners, that makes public the amount of times that we've been asked for information about our users, and importantly, the amount of times that we've actually responded with information. Because whether it's an obligation under PIPEDA or whether it's an obligation in Europe or elsewhere, we always ensure that there's a valid legal authority for specific information, and then only make available the specific information relevant to a request that's made by government or other law enforcement authority.
You mentioned a requirement under PIPEDA or a requirement elsewhere, so others around the table have talked about the GDPR, and we've obviously heard a lot about it. You are compliant with the GDPR in the EU, one would presume, just as you're compliant with PIPEDA here. Does that mean that a Canadian who uses Google services receives less privacy protection than an EU citizen using Google services?
Canadian receives the data protection and privacy protections that are lined out in Canadian law.
That's what I mean. So you're not saying we've got to comply with the most stringent rules, and therefore we're just going to apply them across the board to everyone. You are still ensuring that you're, in some would argue, reducing the stringency of privacy protections according to, so that you'd comply with PIPEDA here.
Well, let's distinguish between a legal compliance and then the protections and services that are accorded to a user. Because the legal compliance, we have specific legal obligations in Canada that we need to meet, and that's the framework under which we evaluate requests for information. But we also have put in place privacy security protections that meet those expectations globally, which means that as a matter of practice and implementation, users see the strongest privacy and security protections across our services.
So that's what I want to get at. So a Canadian user is receiving the same level of privacy protections
Yes.
as an EU citizen. You mentioned data portability in your comments, sort of in passing. We've heard that might be an answer to competition and antitrust issues. We've heard that it's certainly a component of the GDPR. Others coming before us have recently talked about not only portability but interoperability. Would you support change of the law here in Canada to require data portability and interoperability?
That's what I mentioned, the data transfer project in my opening remarks. And the data transfer project is a solid attempt to start addressing that challenge. We've long had both the data liberation front and then data takeout tools that allow our users to export their information so that they can be used in a different service. With the data transfer project, that's in concert with Facebook and Microsoft and Twitter and hopefully others, so that you can effect transfer your information from Google services to another service almost seamlessly.
So you're familiar with the Honest Ads Act in the U.S.? Yeah. So that's probably a pretty limited way of tackling the problem. And we've heard other testimony here to suggest that we should go further, and there should be not only a searchable database, which is now going to be required for elections in some modest fashion, but not for other advertising. But we've also heard recommendations for real-time ad disclosure about engagement metrics, amount of dollars spent, and the specific criteria by which individuals were targeted. You've made a number of steps absent the law requiring you to do so. Google's taken a number of precautions and changed, you were talking about third-party applications. Are you looking at providing real-time ad disclosure, or do we have to legislate?
Real-time ad disclosure to the level of detail you just described, and for political advertising.
Not just political advertising, but absolutely for political advertising, but perhaps for other advertising.
I think the process is iterative, and it's incredibly complex. So,
perhaps legislation. Okay, so another is a really tricky problem. But Ben Scott, Dr. Scott, was before us, and he recommended that big publishers. So Google's not categorized as a publisher today; they're not a broadcaster today, and so they don't have obligations to content control obligations in the same way. But we know that algorithms have replaced editors to a significant degree, and we heard some testimony that, for example, on YouTube, Google's profited significantly from showing advertising based on Alex Jones and InfoWars videos that that Google in fact has recommended, and they've recommended these videos millions and millions of times. If that's the case, and is Google not in some way then responsible for the misinformation being spread? And shouldn't there be some level of disgorgement then that if you're making money off that misinformation, it should be disgorged?
We've have pretty clear policies and guidelines in place that we apply to content that's available on YouTube and elsewhere that we've applied stringently, and we're continuing to tighten the enforcement. And it meant
Who flagged that problem for you? So YouTube's recommending Alex Jones videos millions of times. Did you finally say, "Oh, we should stop doing this"? Did someone bring it to your attention?
it's
presumably-
a multi-sided process. We both have automated review. We also have human review, and then we have YouTube users that flag specific content.
You can see, though, where a company isn't proactively preventing this from happening in the first place. Lawmakers like ourselves think, well, we've got to fix the problem then if the companies are not going to act in the public interest themselves.
Well, the challenge, you mentioned a specific person and a specific site, but even in that instance and many other instances, there are specific pieces of content that could be found objectionable, yet not violate our policy guidelines or not violate law within a jurisdiction, or they could be. And we're trying to balance that line and intervene where necessary. But it's not a yes/no binary option around whether someone has access to our services.
And so, but and this is my last question. But in a case, for example, where, and maybe we need a better process where Google's not the policing content and not being asked to police content, but certainly where Google has profited from hateful content, and you've got the engagement metrics to know how many eyeballs have seen it, and you've got the internal measurement to know how much you've profited through advertising for that content. Why should you be allowed to profit from that content? Once it's deemed to be hateful and we know the engagement metrics, pay the money back, disgorge.
Well, ideally, the content comes down very quickly so that we're not, and in fact, what happens as soon as we enter into that review process is that we stop any revenue generation based on that content. So it's not a question of a review process taking too long and it continuing to accrue revenue on the content. That process stops because and sometimes we actually eliminate
Should be a
revenue
penalty over a
generation
certain-
for content producers altogether.
And perhaps there
So-
should be a penalty if any companies profit over a certain level, there should be some level of penalty perhaps. Anyway, thanks very much.
Yeah, no worries. You'll have time for more questions coming up. Next up for 5 minutes, Mr. Clement.
Thank you. Colin, good to see you. I'm a little bit of a visitor to this committee, but since I'm here and you're here, I thought we'd proceed on that basis. And you may have covered this at your previous encounter, but I just wanted to go through, the hacking incidents that have occurred. Particularly, obviously, we saw that in the U.S. presidential campaign, and maybe you covered this ground, and I don't even know whether it was Gmail or some other service, but my knowledge of the hack on the Democratic national campaign, the Hillary Clinton campaign, was it's kind of a sad story of the in place in that campaign. They had rules and so on, and that just by one human error, which unless we're all taken over by robots tomorrow, are all gonna, human error is gonna continue. Created the opportunity for the Russians to gain access to every single email of the national campaign director of Hillary Clinton, and that was on the basis of a Bitly, right? So, in that case, what these hackers like to do, if they're phishing or spear phishing, is give you a sense of urgency. If you don't do something right away, if you don't click right away, your credit card is going to be compromised, or you're going to have access to your bank account compromised, or what have you. You've got to click here, click here. And there was a Bitly attached to the email that went to John Podesta. He rationally flipped it to his director of IT in the Hillary Clinton campaign and say, is this for real, or is this legit? What's going on? Which was the right thing to do. The director of the IT in the campaign figured out that this was wrong, this was suspect, flipped an email back and said, but he forgot a word. He said, "This is legit," rather than saying, "This is not legit." And then as soon as Podesta saw that, he clicked on the Bitly, and the rest is part of the history books now. So I'm just asking a question. Based on that, there is human error. You can have all the systems in the world, but human error does take place. How do we, other than Maybe it's a combination of education and better systems, and maybe there's AI involved. I just wanted your take on this because we're all coming up to an election campaign and we're all susceptible to hacks. And I'd be very surprised if there was no hacking attempts in the next federal election campaign in Canada. So let me get your side of this.
And this is certainly something that we recognize because of the billions of users we have, particularly starting in Gmail. And we've attacked this problem in multiple ways over the years. Starting with in 2010, we were notifying Gmail users that we were seeing attempts to access their account. So attempts to try and crack their account by force or to send them spoof emails that would force them to make a decision much like yours. And we built on those notifications security protections that now give you a notification if we're seeing an attempt to access your account from an unusual area or an unusual geography. So that if someone outside your normal space, even if you as traveling log into your account elsewhere, you'll get a notification either on your account or on your phone if you've enabled two-factor authentication. And we've forced the implementation of two-factor authentication across most of our products so that you can't just have a hack into your account by having virtue of the account name and the password. You now need a physical token of some way. But we also recognize that you can force your way into a system through brute force. And Jigsaw, which is an Alphabet company, has developed a service called Shield, which is available to nonprofits and political parties and others to help them counter denial of service attacks where there is that sort of brute force attempt to cause a security system to fail. And then as well, just earlier this year, we put in advanced privacy protection, particularly for elected officials, so that they could put in place security controls that we have within the company that not only require two-factor authentication, but also place specific restrictions on unusual login attempts and attempts to access information within your Google account and services so that you are forced to provide additional verification. It's an inconvenience for the user, but it also provides more surety of mind that you've got the security protection and allows you to identify those sorts of, flagrant attempts. And for the general user, I mentioned safe browsing in my remarks. Safe browsing is developed specifically for that concern. And safe browsing takes the data we know about when people have clicked on a link and they use the Chrome browser to go to a page. We can see if that move to a page causes unusual behavior, like immediately hitting the back button, trying to leave that page, or shutting down their browser altogether. And over billions and billions of interactions, we can recognize the pages that are generating suspicious or harmful content and are causing our users to behave that way. We then generate an API that we share with Microsoft and Firefox that allows them to flag those URLs as well, so that when you actually click on a link to those pages, you get a red warning box that tells you that that's a security threat, and most times will not let you advance to the page. So we're taking insights from behavior to try and eliminate the concern as well.
So are you using AI then more and more for security purposes?
We've got that integrated into the systems around our search. So certainly we're using machine learning in our analysis of the behaviors and analysis of the content as well. Yeah.
Time do I have? Yeah, good. Okay,
Yeah.
Thank you.
Next up for 5 minutes, Monsieur Picard.
Hi again. Let's go back to square one in a very simple way to explain how Google works. Frankly, I don't remember, but when I purchase a computer, Windows is already in it. And I go to the internet and the first page is Google. So I don't have to subscribe anywhere. So my access to Google for now, I would have gone to say, Google has nothing on me at day first beside my IP address. Is that right?
At that point, no.
Not even my IP address.
If you're looking at a Google search page, we don't have actually any information about your behavior. As soon as you enter a search, then we'll have some idea about what you're searching for and your IP address on that device.
Perfect. So I have a first request. I'm looking for golf clubs. So I have a list of stores and expert and all that. So you're already aware of what I'm looking at. Mm-hmm. Let's stay at this very simple version of Google. the only thing you have is this IP address requested this search, and these are the results. This golf club company needs to send advertising.
Yeah.
My understanding is that you don't give them my IP address.
No.
They give you the product to put on your system, and therefore spread it over every IP address you have. But that's not an efficient way to do advertising. And usually those advertising company, whatever company they are, needs to target somehow. And in order to target and make sure that their investment is well placed in Google, they need a return on investment appreciation of this operation. And usually they should put their nose in how you target those IP addresses to make sure that, for example, they will sell golf clubs only to a French-speaking person, therefore you need a limited number of IP address. So they should be involved somewhere in the targeting of the site that will receive the advertising. So they are somewhere involved in an operation where they can at least work on these IP address. Am I right?
So in the limited description you're giving, the IP address does have a geography associated with it. It's not very specific. But the way that interaction with an advertiser happens is that you've made a search, you've used specific terms, you may have written your search in French, you may have written it in Croatian. That helps us identify qualities about the search. We then
It's not the fact that you have, Google has done that.
Yeah.
My issue is that with this very simplistic version of Google, a third party have access to my IP address because they work with you to target the right place, no?
No, so advertisers will say to us, we want to run a campaign, either your local sports shop wants to sell golf clubs this weekend, and they say, we want to deliver ads to people in this geographic space that search for these terms at this time in this language. And then we have an auction where we say to all our advertisers, here is what is available. Someone is searching within this space for this term under these conditions, and then they bid on getting that space in the advertising
So
segment.
let's expand to all services you have where I start putting my name and address and where I live and my age and all that. And do I understand that it works the same way in every cases where this information is totally reserved to your eyes only?
Yep.
So why bother the transparency? Because transparency doesn't change the way you work. Before I didn't know what you did with my data. Now I just know what you do with my data. But you do the same thing with my data. It doesn't change the way you work. You just inform your client that now you're transparent. It doesn't give anything. And if I refuse for my data to be exchanged, I may see my service refused. Then I won't have access anymore to my service, because you need my information as a exchange currency for the services you sell to advertising.
I don't think that's true. I think because advertising fuels these free services, we need to deliver advertising. Advertising that is more specific to your needs is more relevant to you and is more relevant to the advertisers, you pointed out. So it is more valuable to the advertiser. We hope it's more valuable to you as well, because in effect it's answering a question, and it's answering a need that you've expressed an interest in. But you can turn off tracking on your browser. You can turn off location services. You can tell us within your account profile that you don't want us to keep track of your preferences. And that will provide less detailed and less precise advertising. Hopefully
Everything
it's
is
still
then
useful.
by default not accessible, because we wouldn't do that. Everything we do and we talk about, why don't we just decide everything you provide a company is not accessible, and you have to opt in order to have more information from a third-party company. Therefore, I wouldn't bother about my private information because by default, it's inaccessible. That would put you out of business?
I'm sorry, I don't understand the distinction. If you, by default, there's no
You can do nothing
information collection.
Google can do nothing with my information because it's private.
I think from our point of view, there needs to be a certain delivery of advertising to support the services, and that's what makes the services available to all Canadians, not just people who can pay subscriptions. And what we try to do is be as transparent as possible, and that's why you're seeing so much information that may cause you concern, is because we're trying to be as transparent about what we know about you as an individual, the information you shared with us, and then to an earlier question, being transparent about when and if we share it with anyone else. So we don't share it with advertisers. In the case of law enforcement, under certain conditions, we still behave in our users' interest to protect that information. The reality is that you can operate using Chrome and using Google Maps and most of our services without being identified as an individual and without having a Google account. It will just be a lot simpler and with a lot less detail that's relevant to you as an individual. But you can use Maps without being a Google account holder.
Thank you, Mr. Picard. Next up for another 5 minutes, Mr. Kent.
Thanks very much, Chair. Mr. McCain, not long ago, the National Research Council warned the Government of Canada that Canada was at risk of becoming a nation of data cows, basically leaking, giving away some of our most valuable national resources to companies like yours. And I know that you've separated Google from your sibling company under the Alphabet umbrella with a lack of knowledge, but surely when people like Ann Cavoukian criticize the mystery, the lack of information, the contradictions of things like de-identifying data, of privacy by design, by consent, you must be concerned, Google must be concerned on how that reflects on your company and the concerns, very similar concerns mirrored by what we're seeing with the Sidewalk Labs scandal or controversy.
I think if I could answer to two separate points. You mentioned the NRC's observation about the use of data. And I think that observation points at the wrong point in the process of innovation and creation, because data is not scarce, and data is not a resource to be conserved. Data is, in fact, readily generated by all sorts of activities and is available in many, many ways. The true process of innovation is developing the tools and the services to be able to translate that into products and services. And in that observation from that particular document, what's overlooked is how we at Google create tools and services that allow Canadian companies and others around the world, in the case of TensorFlow, to use the insight from artificial intelligence research to drive product development based on their own data sets. And our artificial intelligence researchers also make available testing sets so that Canadian companies working in that field can evaluate the data available to them and use it more effectively without involvement or possession or any benefit accruing to us other than using our tools. On the other element about Sidewalk and privacy, I joined Google from the privacy commissioners because there was already a path of deep introspection and product development on data protection and privacy. And that's continued. And it's continuing apace, and through the changes I told you about this morning and more to come, we're focusing on improving privacy and data protection for our users. And we've been in healthy conversations with Dr. Cavoukian in the past on these elements. And we see ourselves as a company pursuing a strong conversation around data protection and its evolution within the context of whether it's civil society or commercial use. So Sidewalk is following one path, we're following another. We have the resources available to put in place the protections I've described today.
Has the Canadian Privacy Commissioner been in contact with you or with Google as part of his investigation of the Cambridge Analytica Facebook aggregate IQ scandal?
Not that I know of.
Right. How do you respond to reportage such as from Associated Press saying that despite Google's statements, as your statements here today about not following users when they request that they make the break, that in fact and I think the statement was in the AP story was Google does continue to track users even when they don't consent to being tracked. Is that a splitting of hairs that in fact the blind consent that we know many people do when they accept conditions, they don't realize that that consent includes being tracked and data accumulated?
I think I run the risk if you're accusing me of splitting hairs, but realistically, we provide a control within your account on location tracking. But the reality of using mobile phones within a mobile network is that your mobile phone is constantly sending a signal about its location to the network. So that data is available in a separate track, and we can only speak to how location data is being used within our network, within our constraints. And if others are using that data that's being shared with the cell phone network, then that's something that I can't speak to. But there's a reality there that as we've discussed in May and again today, for the user, the interaction is often complex and the clarity is not evident. And in that case, it needs to be further clarified. Great.
Thank you, Mr. Kent. Next up for 3 minutes. Just before we finish the round, though, we're going to let it go again. Just if there's any questions, they'll get asked. We have to 1 o'clock. We also have some committee business at the very end for about 10 minutes. So, Mr. Angus, 3 minutes.
Thank you very much. I had the pleasure a number of years back of meeting with employees at Google New York, and I have to say that, in terms of a corporate structure, you have hired the best of the best of the best. People, I think, brilliant, people with a sense of a vision of where they need to go. So I just want to have that on the record of how much I respect the employees at Google. And we saw recently that it's been employees at Google who've been challenging certain corporate decisions that are being made. For example, Project Maven, which was the facial recognition with the Pentagon for drones, that people were not willing to participate in that project because they didn't feel it reflected the culture that Google was founded in. Recently, 1,400 Google employees signed a letter to raise deep concerns about Project Dragonfly in China regarding the question of capitulating to censorship and surveillance demands in exchange for access to the Chinese market. The letter says that it's a forfeiture of our values to go along with this project. Now, in the United States, we've been told that Google management has ordered that memo to be taken down. Has there been any steps in Google Canada to stop employees from speaking up about Project Dragonfly?
I'll address that with a general observation first. I take great pride in the fact that I work at a company, as you've observed, where employees are allowed to voice their opinions, and including opinions about product strategy and company strategy. And as you pointed out, product decisions are made by the senior-most leadership of the organization. You mentioned earlier Project Maven. Project Maven, as it applies to the implementation of artificial intelligence, was part of the conversation around the development of our principles for the use of artificial intelligence, which was a collaborative effort across our engineering and product teams and leadership to clearly communicate how we're going to approach the development and implementation of AI. In the specific question you asked, there hasn't been direction like that in Canada.
Okay, because if I'm looking at the letter that was signed by the Google employees, that they were very concerned about capitulating to China in terms of setting up a search engine that will allow dissidents to be tracked, that, quote, we have not made clear what our red lines are in this area internationally. I raise this because Google, one of the things that made Google such an exciting company when it was formed was that it had its policy of do no evil, and it's decided to drop that motto of do no evil. And now we see these deals with the Pentagon, we see these deals with the government of China. From a regulatory point of view, it's rather disturbing that a company with as much power as Google can make these decisions in face of its own corporate culture that its employees are speaking up on. What do you think we should be looking at in terms of regulatory oversight to make sure that Google is not doing evil?
I think that we demonstrate through action, whether it's through the principles on AI or whether it's through a transparency report, what our interactions are in a concrete and demonstrable way with those governments and with our intent with products. And we've moved on from a world where we had a very simple suite of products into one where we're pushing innovation and service delivery across a number of areas. That communications becomes more complex. But we continue to have that internal dialogue.
I guess finally, because when you came here in May, we asked if there had been any data breaches, and you said you were not aware of it. Yet, in response to Cambridge Analytica, you had done this analysis of Google Chrome's data breach, and that had been flagged. The Wall Street Journal said that the decision had been made not to disclose this past spring, in part because of fears that it would draw regulatory scrutiny. Well, here we are, a parliamentary committee, and you came and told us there had been no data breaches. So were you aware of that, or did Google head office just not tell you that there was a data breach that should have been disclosed to our committee when we invited you the first time?
I think you're referring to the Google Plus
Yep.
that we discussed. That wasn't a data breach, that was a bug.
Yeah. But it's the issue here. I'm not a tech guy, but I can read. And it said that they were worried it would draw regulatory scrutiny. So you came to our committee and told us everything was fine. Google knew things weren't fine. If the question was about regulatory scrutiny, were you made aware of that when you came here? Or were you just splitting hairs so you weren't telling us that?
I was not aware of it when I appeared, and our evaluation determined that it wasn't a breach, it was a bug.
But you were worried about regulatory scrutiny.
I can't speak to the authors of that memo.
Thank you.
Looks like we have one more question from each party, so we'll start off with Mrs. Vandenbelt, and we'll go to, I think, Mr. Kent, and then Mr. Angus again, and then we should be done, but we'll see where the time goes. So, Ms. Vandenbelt.
Thank you very much. I'd like to go back to the part that you discussed in the beginning when you outlined the key areas on controls, and particularly in this case, not the Google search engine, but YouTube. Obviously, there are certain things on YouTube that would go against the user policy that are automatically removed, or the person is informed that it's been removed because they're violating the policy. I would be very interested in knowing how are those determinations made? So, for instance, is it an individual person that looks at those? Is it an algorithm? Are you using some sort of AI? Are there keywords that you're looking at? Because there's a couple that I'm a little bit concerned about. After the testimony at this committee of Mr. Vickery, I posted my questions back and forth, just like you and I are doing right now. It's televised. It's on Parleview, and one of the questions that I'd asked was about the fact that there had been a Google Drive that some of this data had been found on. And when I went to post that intervention, which was from a parliamentary television site, with the only caption was the name of our study, which is the breach of personal information involving Cambridge Analytica and Facebook, it was found to violate the YouTube, and it was removed, and I was told that I would have penalties. I went for a review, and of course after a review it was posted back again. I know of another member of Parliament who, in question period, asked a question about cannabis, and that was removed because it was said that he was promoting the use of drugs. So, what my question is how are these determinations made? Is there, what are the algorithms or terms, or how do you do that with YouTube? Because there are at the same time an awful lot of things that are on YouTube that promote hate, that are anti-democratic, that are maybe perhaps even put there by interests that have links to international crime, or I worry that it's the way that these algorithms are being used might not necessarily be capturing what we really want to remove, but free speech in an environment like this, which is a parliamentary committee, that's something that has been actually caught in this net.
So you're describing two very specific cases that I'll dive into right after an observation. We have intensive review process that are both driven by algorithmic decision-making, as well as a focus on keywords, and then also details about the account itself. So, for example, a brand new account attempting to post content on a flagged material, you may see that you're not able to post it publicly before it's reviewed. You may see that you're not able to monetize it until we've actually reviewed it. But we go through this process to ensure that we're checking it against the corpus of material that we are aware of. And I say that specifically because in your first instance, it's quite possible that when you posted a video of televised material, CPAC has worked with us to register CPAC material as material that needs to be reviewed under our content ID guidelines. And that's our protection for copyright holders that want to avoid television programs, movies, music from being posted by users without their permission.
But it's a very common thing. I posted CPAC, I posted things from committees all the time.
That's my supposition that's why that
And
happened.
that wasn't the reason that was given.
Okay. I didn't have that information. So, and then on the cannabis example, that's an example of there's a relatively fast-breaking space here where we're trying to adjust our internal systems to differentiate between the promotion and use of cannabis in illegal context, especially in an international arena, versus what's happening in Canada and the fact that it is now legal. So our advertising systems, as you might imagine, we're learning internally through that algorithm, through manual review, through flagging by our users, that there's certain content that is now allowed and certain content that isn't. So it's an iterative process, and it overlaps technology and human intervention, and that's especially important in sensitive areas. So what happens in the case of violent content or extremist content is that once we're given an opportunity to recognize that there's a video clip or an audio clip that is objectionable and illegal, we can use that same content ID flagging system to identify it as soon as it's uploaded and not make it available, and in instances, shut down that account. So.
How many resources do you have in terms of actual people that are able to review this? Is this how much of it is this just done automatically by algorithms, and how much is it actually you have sufficient
I can give you a
resources?
full number, but it's a continuing level of investment both on a technological basis and a human basis to provide the review.
Okay, thank you. I'll give the questions to Mr. Erskine-Smith if he wants.
I just had one question. I got two topics that I failed to cover. One is algorithmic transparency, and we've had witnesses come before us and say there need to be third-party auditors that step into Google's offices and step into Facebook's offices and assess whether the algorithms you're employing are done so in an appropriate way. Would you have any problem with that?
To me, that's looking at the wrong end of the processes, because in many cases that have been identified so far, it's the data that has demonstrated bias. And if you're running an algorithm against biased data or an unrepresentative sample, then you're going to get erroneous or erratic results. In some cases, the algorithm, that's proprietary commercial technology. And I don't know if an auditor would have the capacity to evaluate what the algorithm is intended to do, and how they would evaluate working versus non-working under what standard.
So potentially a practical problem for us to solve, but in theory, not necessarily an objection. So the last thing, just on regulating speech, right to be forgotten, potential privacy torts, defamation, harassment, hate. There are reasons for material to be taken down. Do you have a preferred model of how this information should be taken down? So if Google doesn't want to be the police on this, who should be? Should Google pay into a fund, and a public body should be administering and making these decisions? Do you have a view as to how this should work?
Just one observation and an answer, because you mentioned right to be forgotten. I think there's an ongoing conversation about right to be forgotten in Canada, and one thing that the Privacy Commissioner highlighted in his consultation document and his guidelines was that there's an inherent conflict with the Charter on freedom of expression, and that needs to have a full-throated conversation in public, ideally at this committee, around how the right to be forgotten should be exercised in Canada. And from our point of view, these processes exist, and they're called the courts. And the courts have an understanding of the standards, and they have an understanding of the public expectations, and they have the tools available to them.
Of course, to take down content all the time, though. There's so many pieces of content that should be taken down. You can't expect me as a lawyer, someone to pay me $400 an hour to run off to court and to take down a little comment here and a little comment there. So what's the better system?
But the alternative that you're describing to me is the process that exists in Europe, where you're asking us to make an evaluation about whether your protected expression violates
Too much? Google doesn't make enough to pay for it?
I hate to
I
cut
think
you
there's
off,
a fundamental
Mr.
charter
Smith,
right, and then you are giving us the responsibility of an administrative court, whether you want to do that or not.
Okay, we have a couple minutes left. If we can divide that up, that'd be great. But Mr. Kent, and then
Yeah. One very quick question. Fortune magazine tells us that Google outspent every other company in North America last year in lobbying Washington. I'd like to know, how much has Google spent in Canada lobbying governments at the federal, provincial, and municipal level, and how many registered lobbyists do you have in Canada?
We have 3 registered lobbyists. That's my team, work here in Ottawa. I can't give you the exact expenditures. They're not sizable. What we do with that lobbying is this sort of interaction, whether on an individual level or at committee or with broader society. And the reality of that number is that we are trying to be transparent about our interaction on what is obviously an increasingly complex set of subjects.
Google Canada would separate its lobbying efforts from Sidewalk Labs?
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Angus for 1 minute.
Very quickly, just following up on the question of lobbying, because the question of this government's relationship with the data lobbyists, and there's nothing wrong with lobbyists, but now John Broadhead was very involved with the Liberal government. He was in infrastructure, he helped write the platform, and now he's the point person for Sidewalk Labs. Prior to him being appointed to Sidewalk Labs or hired by your sister company, did any of the Google lobbyists meet with him?
Google lobbyists? Yeah. I believe we met with the Department of Infrastructure to talk to them about transit investments between Toronto and Waterloo.
Right.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks to Google and Colin again for coming to our committee. I think we're going to forego our committee business. We made a decision about Thursday. We have the Dutch PM coming to speak, so we are not going to have committee on Thursday, which Facebook would have appeared, so we're going to push that to another day. But thank you for your testimony, to your questions, and again, have a good day.
Thank you very much.